My father told me he couldn't walk me down the aisle because my sister needed him at a birthday party for my dead mother's cat. I thought he was joking at first. I actually laughed, one short stupid breath of a laugh, because there are sentences so humiliating your brain refuses to let them enter through the front door. I was standing barefoot in my apartment in Charlotte, with my wedding binder open on the kitchen island. Silk ribbon samples spread beside a cold mug of coffee, and a grocery list stuck to my palm because planning a wedding had turned me into a project manager with mascara. I had called my dad to ask one simple question. Not for money. Not for a fight. Not for him to go back and repair 15 years of making the spare daughter. I only asked, Dad, are you still walking me down the aisle? There was a pause. Not a normal pause. A guilty pause. The kind a person uses when they already picked a side and hopes you will save them from saying it out loud. Claire, he said, Addison planned something important for that day. My fingers tightened around the phone. Important like what? From somewhere behind him, my sister's voice floated into the call like she had been waiting by the curtain for her cue. It's Pumpkin's remembrance birthday, Addison said. I do it every year. You know what she meant to Mom. Pumpkin was not dead. Pumpkin was a 17-pound orange tabby with one cloudy eye, a bad attitude, and Adelant for knocking drinks off tables while staring you in the soul. My mother had adopted her from a rescue outside Asheville the year before she got sick. After Mom died, Addison turned that cat into a holy object with whiskers. She bought Pumpkin custom cakes, flower crowns, embroidered blankets, little memorial candles even though the cat was very much alive and usually asleep under the china cabinet. For years, I said nothing. If Addison wanted to honor Mom by throwing a party for a cat who scratched every guest except my father, fine. People grieve in strange ways, but this year, Addison had chosen the exact Saturday of my wedding. My wedding has been on the calendar for 13 months. I said. Addison made a wounded sound, soft and perfect. She had mastered the art of crying before anyone accused her of being cruel. I'm sorry my grief is inconvenient to your aesthetic, she said. My dad sighed. Both of you are emotional. There it was, the old family trick. Addison lit a match, threw it into a room, and somehow I ended up listed as a co-arsonist. I'm not emotional, I said. I'm asking if you are going to walk your daughter down the aisle. You know Addison is fragile. I know Addison is 28. That's not fair. Neither is missing your oldest daughter's wedding because your younger daughter scheduled a birthday party for a living cat. Pumpkin gave a loud meow in the background, as if she also objected to being used as a weapon. Dad lowered his voice. You have always been the strong one. The strong one. I hated those words so much I could feel them under my skin. I was the strong one when Mom was diagnosed and Addison stopped going to school because the fluorescent lights made grief worse. I was the strong one when Dad needed someone to pick up prescriptions, cook dinner, clean the kitchen, answer calls from the insurance company, and tell relatives Mom was resting when she was actually vomiting into a pink plastic basin. I was the strong one when Addison cried on the couch and Dad stroked her hair while asking me if I had remembered to pay the electric bill. After Mom died, Addison fell apart in public. I fell apart in the shower with the water running so no one would hear me. Dad comforted the daughter who made noise and praised the one who disappeared. I need you too, I said. It came out smaller than I wanted. I hated that. I wanted to sound angry, polished, untouchable. Instead, I sounded 16 again, standing in the hallway with a casserole dish in my hands, watching my father carry my sister to bed because she had cried herself dizzy while I was expected to clean up the sympathy plates. Addison started sobbing behind him. If you leave me alone that day, she cried, I honestly don't know what I'll do. I could hear the shift. I didn't need to see my father's face. I knew that movement by sound alone, the little turn of his body, away from me toward her. He had been choosing her for so long he could do it silently. Claire, he said, we can celebrate with you another time. My wedding, another time. My knees went weak. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the ivory invitation proof with my name and Ethan's name printed in gold foil like those letters belonged to a woman whose family loved her correctly. Don't come then, I said. Don't be dramatic. I laughed again, but this time it had a knife in it. Right. The cat party is sacred, but my wedding is drama. I hung up before he could make him apologize for bleeding. When Ethan came home 20 minutes later with Thai takeout and a 6-pack of ginger beer, I was still standing in the kitchen, phone in my hand, wedding binder open, one ribbon sample stuck to my sock. He took one look at my face and set the bags down like he was approaching a bomb. What happened? I told him everything. I did not tell it gracefully. I paced the living room in my old Duke sweatshirt and cried so hard my nose ran. I said living cat 6 times. I imitated Addison's trembling voice, then hated myself for sounding mean, then got mad again because she had made cruelty look like vulnerability. For half my life. Ethan listened without interrupting. That was one of the reasons I loved him. He did not rush to sand the sharp edges off my pain just because it made the room uncomfortable. He did not say, maybe your dad feels strapped, or maybe Addison doesn't realize what she's doing. He understood that explaining a wound does not stop it from bleeding. When I finished, he said, that is sick, Claire. Just that. Not complicated. Not diplomatic. Not wrapped in fake maturity. That is sick. I covered my face and cried harder because for once someone had named it without making me share the blame. For the first few years, Pumpkin's birthday parties were small and weird. A cupcake on Mom's old china. A picture posted online. A candle Addison refused to blow out because it was for Mom's spirit. Then they grew. Balloons. Custom banners. Little salmon mousse cakes from a pet bakery. Last year, Addison hired a photographer. My father paid for it. He paid for all of it, with a tenderness never offered when I needed help buying textbooks. But my wedding date had not been a secret. I booked the venue 13 months early. I sent save the dates. I made a family group chat. I asked Dad in person, at a diner off I-85, if he would walk me down the aisle, and he had cried into his napkin and said, your mom should be here. I had believed that meant Hugh would be. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I sat on the floor in the dark with my laptop open. I looked at our guest list. Next to my father's name, I had written Walk with Bride. Next to Addison's, I had written Front Row. I stirred until the words blurred. Then I did something I had not done in years. I called my Uncle Ray. Ray was my dad's older brother by 11 minutes, a fact he brought up every chance he got. They had not spoken much since Mom's funeral, after Ray accused Dad of turning Mainto, a little widow with homework, and Dad told him to stay out of his family. I had seen Ray twice in 10 years, both times at funerals, both times wearing a loud tie and looking like trouble in a navy suit. He answered on the 4th ring. Well, he said, if it isn't the Carter niece who still owes me a rematch at pool. I had no warm-up left in me. Do you want to do something petty and unforgettable? There was a pause. Then held so hard I could hear ice clink in a glass. Finally, a family call worth answering. I told him everything. Dad. Addison. Pumpkin. The wedding, the words, you're the strong one. I expected jokes, gossip, maybe a dramatic curse word. Ray went quiet. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost the fun. He picked the stupidest possible hill toady on. Will you walk me down the aisle? Another pause. You want me to toke you while my brother sits at a birthday party for a cat that is not dead? Yes. Claire, I would crawl over broken glass for that level off symbolism. The next morning, Ray drove up from Columbia and met me for coffee. He arrived in sunglasses, linen shirt, and the kind of confidence that made strangers assume he knew where he was going even when he did not. We took a selfie outside the coffee shop. I posted it with a caption I wrote and deleted 12 times before finally choosing the cleanest version. Grateful for family who shows up. My dad called 9 times in 47 minutes. I did not answer. Addison texted first. Really classy. Weaponizing Uncle Ray against Dad during Mom's month. Mom's month. As if September belonged to the dead and not to the living daughter getting married in it. Then my venue coordinator called. Her voice was careful. Too careful. Claire, I just wanted to confirm something strange. Someone called from your family and asked whether the ceremony processional could be delayed by 2 hours so your father could attend another commitment first. They said you had approved it. The kitchen tilted. I gripped the edge of the counter. I approved nothing. The coordinator hesitated. They also asked whether the memorial roses for your mother could be transferred to an off-site family tribute. My mouth went dry. Those roses were the only part of the wedding I had planned alone. White garden roses wrapped with a strip of Mom's blue scarf, placed in the empty chair beside the aisle. My quiet way of having her there without turning grief into theater. Do not change anything, I said. Of course. I thought I should check. After I hung up, I opened the family group chat and stared at Addison's last message. Really classy. For the first time, I understood something that scared me more than my father's absence. My sister did not only want him to choose her. She wanted my mother's memory too. Dad showed up at my apartment the next evening without calling. I saw him through the peephole, standing in the hallway in his work shirt, hair messy from running his hands through it. For 3 full seconds I considered not opening the door. Then the old daughter in me, the one trained to make things easier, unlocked it. He stepped inside and looked around like he expected to find Ray hiding behind the couch with a cigar and a pitchfork. Are you proud of yourself? He asked. That was his greeting. I crossed my arms. Nice to see you too. You embarrassed me. No, you embarrassed yourself. I stopped protecting you from the consequences. His jaw tightened. My father was a tall man with kind eyes when he wanted them tobe. He coached Little League. He tipped waitresses too much. He shoveled snow for elderly neighbors when we lived in Virginia. He was not a monster. That made everything harder. Monsters are easy to hate. My father was a decent man in every room except the one where his daughters needed him equally. You know Ray is doing this to get back at me, he said. Ray said yes when you said no. I didn't say no. You said Addison needs you more. She does. The words landed clean. No cushion. No apology. For a second neither of us moved. Then I nodded, because sometimes the body accepts what the heart keeps trying to renegotiate. At least you finally said it. He rubbed his face. Claire, don't do this. Addison is not well. Your mother's death left a hole in her. It left a hole in me too. You handled it differently. No, Dad. I was required to handle it quietly. He looked away, and I hated him for that. I wanted him to meet my eyes when I said it. I wanted him to see the daughter he had turned into furniture, sturdy and useful and easy to forget until someone needed somewhere to sit. He lowered his voice. If you cancel this thing with Ray, I can talk to Addison. Maybe we can move Pumpkin's event to Sunday. I stared at him. So you could have talked to her the whole time. His face changed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. You know it's not that simple. It is that simple. When I was the only one getting hurt, nothing could be done. When your brother showed up in a Facebook photo, suddenly you had options. He tried to speak. I cut him off. Did Addison call the venue? He blinked too slowly. Don't lie. He sighed. She was upset. She thought maybe if the schedule shifted, my memorial roses, Dad. His shoulders dropped. She said your mom would have wanted to be remembered with Pumpkin too. My laugh came out flat. Mom would have wanted her roses beside her daughter. While she got married. He flinched. Good. I wanted him to. Then he said something that took whatever hope I had left and snapped it in half. Your mother would also have wanted you to be kind to your sister. I opened the door. Get out. His eyes widened. Claire. Get out before I say something I can unsay. He stood there another moment, as if waiting for me to soften. It did not. Finally he left, moving slowly, like a man being punished for a crime he still wanted to call a misunderstanding. After he was gone, I sat on the couch shaking. Ethan came home from the gym and found me with my hands clenched so tight my nails had left moons in my palms. I told him about Dad, the venue call, the roses, the possible Sunday miracle that appeared only after Ray. Ethan listened. Then he asked a question that changed everything. How do you want to feel when you walk in? I had been so busy thinking about what I wanted Dad Torgrit that I had not asked myself what I wanted to carry. I don't know, I said. Yes, you do. I looked at the wedding invitation on the coffee table. It had about Ray's grin and Dad's shame and Addison's voice shaking on command. I thought about Mom's scarf wrapped around white roses. I thought about spending the most important walk of my life. Turning my head toward the front row to measure someone else's reaction. I didn't want to use Ray as a weapon, I said slowly. Ethan nodded. I love him for showing up. But I don't want my entrance to be about punishing my father. Then what do you want? I swallowed. I want to walk by myself. The words were terrifying and beautiful. Ethan reached for my hand. Then you walk by yourself. Calling Ray was harder than I expected. He answered with, please tell me we're wearing sunglasses during the processional. I almost cried. I think I'm walking alone. He was quiet but not wounded. Good, he said at last. Good. If I walk you, half the room watches your dad's empty chair and my smug face. If you walk yourself, they have to watch you. I laughed through tears. You're not mad? Kid, I'm proud. Also, I already bought a suit, so I'm still coming and eating expensive chicken. That night I unblocked Dad long enough to send one message. I'm walking alone. You are invited as my father, not as Addison's negotiator. If you come, come for me. If you don't, I will understand exactly what that means. He did not answer. On the morning of my wedding, I woke up before my alarm in a hotel room that smelled like hairspray, coffee, and lilies. My bridesmaids were already whispering in the next room. Someone had put a playlist on low. The city outside the window looked clean and bright, all glass and blue sky, like the weather had not received the family memo. My phone sat face down on the nightstand like a loaded gun. I did not touch it. The makeup artist curled my hair. My best friend Nina steamed my dress. Ethan's mother delivered a handwritten note from him and cried before I even opened it. In the middle of all that motion, the chair beside the aisle appeared in my mind, empty, waiting for Mom's roses, and maybe for all the versions of me who had waited to be chosen. At 2:17, Nina checked my phone because I refused to. Her face changed. What? I asked. It's your dad. Micah's tightened. She read, Addison is having a serious episode. I'm trying to calm her down. I may be late, but I love you and I hope you can show grace today. Show grace? My name was Claire, but somehow grace had always been my assignment. Anything else? I asked. Nina hesitated. There's a photo. Addison posted it. Against every healthy instinct, I looked. There was my father in his living room, holding Pumpkin like a furry orange football. Addison stood beside him in a black dress, eyes red but makeup perfect. Behind them hung a banner, Happy Remembrance Birthday, Pumpkin. On the side table sat a framed photo of my mother and a cake shaped like a paw print. The caption read, Some bonds are bigger than one day. My hands went cold. Nina snatched the phone away. No, she said. Absolutely not. We are not letting a cat with a fondant cake ruin your eyeliner. I laughed because if I didn't, I would fold in half. At 3:58, the venue coordinator came to the bridal suite. Ready with your escort? I looked at myself in the mirror. White dress. Mom's blue scarf wrapped around the bouquet. No father. No replacement father. No borrowed symbol. Ready alone, I said. The coordinator did not pity me. She just nodded and touched her earpiece. When the doors opened, the room rose. For half a second, I could feel every person seeing me. Not the lace, not the flowers, not the smile I had practiced. Me. The woman walking past an empty front row chair where a father should have been. The daughter carrying her mother's scarf because no one had given her the jewelry mom once promised. The sister who had lost to a cat party and still had to keep her chin level. Then I saw Ethan. He was crying. Not politely. Not movie star one tear crying. His whole face had broken open with love and anger and pride. He looked at me like I was not abandoned, not embarrassing, not too much. He looked at me like the aisle was not something I had been left to survive, but something I had chosen to claim. So I walked. I did not look for my father until I reached the first row. His chair was empty. Of course it was. But I did not fall. The ceremony was beautiful in the unfair way life can be beautiful even when part of you is bleeding. Ethan's vows made people laugh and cry. Mine shook at the start, then grew stronger. When the officiant mentioned those who could not be with us, the wind moved through the open doors and lifted one edge of Mom's scarf against my wrist. I decided to believe what I needed to believe. Then Aunt Linda asked where my father and Addison were. Aunt Linda was my mother's cousin, a retired school principal with orthopedic shoes and the moral patience of a guillotine. I took a sip of champagne. They're at Pumpkin's remembrance birthday. Aunt Linda blinked. Pumpkin the cat? Yes. The cat that is alive? Yes. The orange one that bit the mailman? That's the one. Aunt Linda's mouth turned into a line so thin it could have cut wire. Well, she said, that is the dumbest damn thing I have heard since your uncle tried to deep fry a turkey in a carport. Near the end of the night, my dad texted. I'm sorry I missed it. Addison was in crisis. I hope one day you understand that she needed me more today. It hurt me deeply that you used Ray to punish me. I love you and wish you both happiness. I read it twice. The first time as a daughter. The second time as evidence. Then I turned the phone off. The next morning, I woke up married and hollow. Ethan brought coffee Tobed and said, do we read messages or protect our peace? Let's ruin my peace efficiently, I said. Dad called during our short honeymoon in Savannah from a number I did not recognize. Ethan and I were walking back from breakfast, holding paper cups of coffee, Spanish moss hanging over the sidewalk, newlyweds in the middle of a city too pretty for family ruin. I almost ignored it. But hope is a stupid little animal. Even beaten, it crawls toward the door when it hears a familiar knock. I answered. Dad did not apologize. He explained. Addison had been shaking. Addison had threatened to disappear. Addison said the wedding proved I had erased Mom. Addison needed him grounded and present. He was sorry if I felt hurt, but he had been trapped between two daughters and made the choice he thought would prevent the worst outcome. I let him talk for exactly 2 minutes. Then I said, you missed my wedding. I know. No. I don't think you know what that means. He sighed, Claire, I'm trying here. No, you're trying to make me agree that abandoning was responsible. His voice hardened. You embarrassed me in front of the family. I answered questions. You turned people against your sister. She tried to steal Mom's memorial roses. She was grieving. She was competing. He went quiet. For a moment, I heard street noise on his end, a car passing, Pumpkin meowing faintly in the background. Then he said the thing that finished breaking whatever was left, we need to discuss your mother's jewelry. I stopped walking. Ethan looked back. Dad continued, given the way you handled things publicly, I'm not sure it's appropriate right now to divide those pieces. Addison is devastated. She feels you attacked Mom's memory. I think we need to wait until there is more respect. The sidewalk seemed to drop an inch under my feet. Mom's jewelry was not worth much by rich people's standards, but it was priceless to me. A garnet necklace Dad bought her on their 10th anniversary. Pearl earrings she wore to church. A thin gold bracelet she let me try on when I was little if I washed my hands first. She had told me once, near the end, that she wanted my girls to have my pretty things, not because they're fancy, but because hands should remember hands. For years, Dad said it was too painful to sort through the box. I believed him. Now the box had become a leash. So Mom's memory is a reward for obedience, I said. Don't twist my words. I'm repeating your meaning. I am asking for family loyalty. No. You're asking me to trade silence for my mother's necklace. That is an ugly way to put it. It is an ugly thing to do. He said my name in that warning tone fathers use when they still think you are young enough to be sent to your room. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone still and furious. Dad, I said, I know you love me. That's the problem. You love me, but you do not, Shazim. He did not answer. I hung up. For the rest of that day, I moved through Savannah like a ghost in bridal white I was no longer wearing. Ethan sat with me on a bench by the river while tourists took pictures and horse carriages clopped past like we were in a postcard. I told him about the jewelry, about Mom's promise, about the way Dad had turned even inheritance into a behavior chart. Ethan listened, then said, "You don't have Vito, keep proving you can survive them." That sentence undid me more than Dad's skull. Because that was what my whole life had become, surviving so well that everyone mistook it for consent. When we got home, I sent Dad one final message before blocking him. I need distance. Do not contact me about Addison, Pumpkin, family events, or Mom's jewelry unless there is a real legal matter. If there is a life or death emergency, have Aunt Linda call Ethan. This is not revenge. This is protection. Then I blocked him too. Then Aunt Linda called. I need to ask you something, she said. Her voice had that principal tone, the one that made adults sit straighter. Okay. Did your father ever give you the envelope your mother left for your wedding day? I stopped chopping onions. What envelope? Silence. Then, very quietly, Aunt Linda said, "Oh, honey." My hand tightened around the knife. She told me that 3 months before Mom died, she had asked Aunt Linda to witness a handwritten note and place a copy with her small personal instructions. Not a formal will for the house or accounts, those had been handled separately. This was Amethyst's list. Who got which quilt? Where her recipe cards should go. What to do with Pumpkin. What jewelry belonged to each daughter. And there was a sealed envelope marked, "For Claire, on the morning she gets married." It hot your father had it, Aunt Linda said. Elaine gave him the original box. I had a copy of the inventory because she made me promise. I didn't think I needed to interfere. My throat closed. What did the inventory say? Aunt Linda breathed in. The garnet necklace was yours specifically. Your mother wrote that you loved it because it looked like cranberry light. She wanted you to have it on your wedding day. The kitchen blurred. Aunt Linda kept talking, her voice shaking now with anger. The pearl earrings were for Addison. The bracelet was to be shared or passed later. Pumpkin was supposed to stay with your father as long as she was cared for, and if he couldn't care for her, Elaine wanted you asked first because she said you were the one who remembered feeding schedules. Even from beyond the grave, Mom had seen me. Not as the strong one. Not as the practical one. As the daughter who remembered. Can you send me the copy? I asked. I already did. When the email came through, I opened the attachment with hands that would not stop trembling. There it was. My mother's handwriting. Uneven from illness but still hers. Claire gets the garnet necklace on her wedding day, no matter what. She always loved it. Tell her strength is not the same as not needing tenderness. I made a sound I had never heard come from myself. Ethan ran into the kitchen. I handed him the phone. He read it, and his eyes filled before mine did. Then Aunt Linda texted another picture. It was a screenshot from Addison's Instagram story, posted the night of my wedding. I had refused to look at most of them, but apparently Aunt Linda had been collecting everything with the grim discipline of a woman who once ran a middle school. In the photo, Addison was holding Pumpkin beside the paw print cake. Around Addison's neck was my mother's garnet necklace. For a few seconds, I did not feel pain. I felt clarity. It was so sharp it almost felt like peace. My sister had not only stolen my father from my wedding day. She had worn the necklace my dead mother meant for me while posing at a party designed to keep him away. And my father had Lethier. I did not confront them right away. The next twist came from the dumbest possible place, Pumpkin's vet. I called to ask about the cat's care because Mom's note had mentioned feeding schedules, and because some part of me still cared about that cranky orange animal who had slept on Mom's legs during chemo. The receptionist would not give me medical details without authorization, but she did confirm one thing after I explained I was checking adoption records for a family. Memorial. Pumpkin's adoption date was May 6th. Not September. The remembrance birthday Addison claimed happened every year on my wedding date did not match the cat's birthday, adoption day, or even the date Mom brought her home. So I asked cousins for old screenshots. I searched Addison's posts from past years. Pumpkin's parties had been in May twice, June once, and skipped completely the year Addison went to Miami with friends. The September event had been created 2 weeks after my wedding invitations went out. She had not forgotten. She had chosen. I sat at the dining table with printed pages spread around me, Mom's note, Addison's posts, the venue call log, screenshots, the vet date. Ethan brought me coffee and did not ask if he was okay. I was not okay. But I was ready. We arrived 20 minutes late, which I highly recommend when entering a room where people expect you to be ashamed. The brunch was in a private dining room with white tablecloths, hydrangeas, and a mimosa bar. Addison stood near the fireplace in a cream dress, glowing in the way people glow when they believe they control the story. Dad stood beside her, older than I remembered, shoulders tight. Blake shook hands with relatives like he was running for office. And around Addison's neck, again, was Mom's garnet necklace. My necklace. My mother's cranberry light. For 1 second, grief punched through my ribs so hard I almost sat down. Ethan's hand found the small of my back. "You sure?" he whispered. "Yes." Dad saw us and went pale. Addison saw us and smiled like a knife. "Well," she said loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear, "I'm glad you decided family matters after all." I smiled back. "That's actually why I'm here." Aunt Linda moved to my left. Ray moved to my right. It was ridiculous and dramatic and exactly what I needed. Dad came toward me quickly. "Claire, not today." I looked at him. "That's what you said on my wedding day without saying it." His face tightened. "This is your sister's celebration. And my wedding was mine." People had started to notice. Conversations thinned. Blake walked over with a polite, confused smile. "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "But it's going to be clearer in a minute." Addison laughed. "Are you seriously doing this? At my engagement brunch?" I looked at the necklace. "You wore Mom's necklace at your cat party on my wedding day." Her hand flew to the garnets. Dad said, "Claire." Aunt Linda opened her folder. "No, Frank. Let her finish." That was the first time I had heard someone in that family use my father's name like a gavel. I pulled out a copy of Mom's handwritten inventory. I did not wave it. I did not scream. I placed it on the nearest table, between the mimosas and the Tinnaquicks. "Mom left instructions," I said. "The garnet necklace was meant for me on my wedding day. Dad had the box. Addison wore it the same day he misled me wedding to attend her fake September cat memorial." The word fake moved through the room like a thrown glass. Addison's face changed. Just for a second. Not sadness. Fear. "It wasn't fake," she snapped. "It was for Mom. Pumpkin's adoption date is May 6th. You held previous parties in May and June. You created this event 2 weeks after my wedding invitations went out." Blake looked at her. "Addison?" She turned on him. "You don't understand. Claire always gets to look normal because she hides how cruel she is." I felt the old hook search for my ribs. This time it did not catch. I hid because every time I hurt, Dad told me you hurt more. Dad whispered, "Please stop." I turned to him. "You stopped me memorial roses from being moved only because the venue checked with me. You told me maybe Addison's event could move only after Ray agreed to walk me. You missed my wedding, then texted that she needed you more. You threatened to withhold Mom's jewelry because I embarrassed and you let her wear the necklace Mom left for me." His eyes filled. He was trying to keep her alive. Addison made a choked sound. The room went still. There it was. The sacred shield. The sentence no one could argue with without sounding monstrous. I had lived under that shield for 15 years. I spoke carefully. "If Addison was truly in danger, you should have called 911, a crisis line, or her therapist. You should not have handed her my wedding day as payment for staying calm. You made me responsible for threats I did not create." Aunt Linda nodded once. Ray muttered, "Amen." Addison's mask cracked. "Oh my God," she said. "You want everyone to think I'm crazy." "No," I said. "I want everyone to stop letting you use that fear to control them." She looked around and realized, maybe for the first time, that the room was not automatically moving toward her. So she did what she always did when softness failed. She got cruel. "You think Mom would be proud of you," she said. "You walked alone because no one wanted to stand with you." A small gasp came from someone near the windows. I felt the words hit. They hurt. Of course they hurt. Healing does not make you bulletproof. It just teaches you not to hand the shooter another gun. I picked up the copy of Mom's note. Mom wrote something for me. My voice shook then. I let it. She wrote, "Tell her strength is not the same as not needing tenderness." Dad covered his mouth. For the first time all morning, I saw something in his face that looked less like embarrassment and more like understanding. Too late, but real. I looked at Addison. You can keep telling people I am cold. But Mom saw me. Even when she was dying, she saw me. Addison's eyes filled, but this time the tears did not organize themselves into performance, they looked messy. Angry. Young. Dad stepped toward her, then stopped. That tiny stop was the first honest choice I had ever seen him make. Blake removed his hand from Addison's waist. Is this true? He asked quietly. Addison stared at him. Nobody spoke. Then Ray, because Ray could never leave a silence alone, said, the cat's birthday being off by 4 months is a pretty weird coincidence. A few people laughed. Not because it was funny. Because pressure needed somewhere to go. Addison grabbed her purse. This family is disgusting, she said, which was rich coming from a woman wearing stolen garnets at a brunch with mini quiches. She stormed toward the door. Dad took one step after her out of habit. I said, Dad. He stopped again. I did not ask him to choose me. I was done begging for a choice that should not have required auditions. I only said, the necklace. His face crumpled. Addison turned at the doorway. No, Aunt Linda's voice cut across the room. Take it off, Addison. Addison looked at Blake. Blake did not move. She looked at Dad. Dad looked at the floor slowly, with shaking hands. She unclasped the garnet necklace and threw it on a chair instead of handing it to me. It landed in a loose red curve against beige upholstery. For a second, nobody touched at it. Then Aunt Linda picked it up, wiped it gently with a napkin like it had been through weather, and placed it in my palm. The stones were warm. I closed my fist around them and felt something inside me loosen. Dad asked to meet 5 months later. I said yes because I wanted to know if there was anything left besides damage. We met at a diner halfway between our houses, not the one where he had promised to walk me down the aisle. I wore Mom's garnet necklace under my sweater, not for him to see, but for me to feel. He looked smaller. Shame had taken the starch out of him. I didn't know how to fix it, he said. You can't fix my wedding. He nodded. I know. You can't fix Mom's letter being hidden. You can't fix letting Addison wear the necklace. You can't fix making me the daughter who could wait. His eyes filled. I know. That was new. No offense. No, but Addison. No, you're strong. Just 2 words standing naked between us. Then he said, I should have walked you. I looked out the window at cars moving through the wet parking lot. Yes, I said. You should have. I wanted to. That makes it worse. He cried then. Quietly. Without asking me to comfort him. I appreciated that more than I expected. Before we left, he asked, would you ever let me make it up to you? Maybe someday, renew vows, let me walk. No, he swallowed. I reached across the table, not to hold his hand, just to touch the edge of his napkin so he knew I was not saying it to wound him. I already walked. That moment is mine now. I won't redo it to give you a cleaner memory. He nodded, and this time he seemed to understand. The strangest twist came in spring. Aunt Linda called and said, do you want a cat? I almost dropped my phone. Apparently Addison had moved in with a friend after the engagement collapsed and decided Pumpkin was too emotionally triggering. Dad was traveling for work more often and forgetting the cat's medication. Aunt Linda had stopped by, found Pumpkin's water bowl dry, and threatened everyone with a level of violence unbecoming of a retired educator. She was your mother's cat, Aunt Linda said. And Elaine wrote that if Frank couldn't care for her, you were to be asked first. I did not want Pumpkin. Pumpkin hated most people. Pumpkin shed like it was a religious practice. Pumpkin had been used as a weapon against the happiest day of my life. But Pumpkin had not chosen any of that. So Ethan and I drove to Dad's house with a carrier, a towel, and unrealistic optimism. Pumpkin hissed at me under the dining room table for 20 minutes, then I said, Mom sent me, you old menace, and she blinked like she was considering the claim. We brought her home. For the first week, she lived under our guest bed and judged us from the shadows. Then one night, while I was watching TV, she climbed onto the couch, stepped on my stomach with all 17 pounds of accusation, and settled against my hip. I did not move for 42 minutes. I cried quietly, one hand resting on her orange fur. Not because the cat healed anything. Animals are not magic props. But because, for the first time, Pumpkin was not a shrine, not a threat, not Addison's proof that she owned grief. She was just an old cat who needed clean water, medication, and someone who remembered feeding schedules. Mom would have liked that. We are not a perfect family now. This is not the kind of story where everyone hugs under warm lighting and trauma turns into a lesson you can stitch on a pillow. Addison and I are not speaking. Maybe one day we will. Maybe we will not. Dad and I are careful, like people walking through a house after a fire, testing which beams can still hold weight. Some weeks he does well. Some weeks he slips into old habits and I end the call. The difference is, now I end it without apology. I keep Mom's garnet necklace in a velvet box on my dresser. Sometimes I wear it to dinner. Sometimes I do not. I refuse to turn it into another altar. It is beautiful because she loved it, not because grief needs jewelry to prove itself. The photo from my wedding sits beside it, me at top of the aisle, alone, bouquet in hand, Mom's blue scarf wrapped around the stems. For months, I could not look at that picture without seeing the empty chair. Now I see my shoulders. My straight back. My own feet carrying me forward. My father chose Addison that day. Addison chose to make grief a stage. I chose to keep walking. It took me 31 years to understand that walking alone was not proof that no one loved me. It was proof that I had finally stopped waiting for someone else to deliver me into a life I was already brave enough to enter.